Hey, what's up guys, Matt here with my review of the Nokia Lumia 1020. Now this is Nokia's top of the line flagship device. It's the top Windows phone on the market right now, and the real main thing here is this huge camera on the back. It's a 41 megapixel sensor, which is insane for a camera on a phone. But when you're looking at buying a phone, the camera is just one part of it. So let's go ahead and take a look at what the phone has to offer. When I first picked this phone up, the first thing I thought was, wow, this is massive. In fact, that's the same thing that every single person I let use the phone said. It feels really big, and I think that comes mainly from the fact that this phone really isn't fighting to be the thinnest or the smallest out there. It's wider than the GS4 and way thicker than many of the phones out on the market today, but once you get over how big it feels, you notice that it really feels like a solid device in your hand. On the top of the device, we have a microphone, the SIM tray, and a headphone jack. On the right side is where all your buttons are. The placement is a bit strange. On top you have the volume rockers, in the middle you have your lock button, and on the bottom you have your dedicated camera button. It took me a while to get used to the placement of the volume and lock button, and even after 2 weeks of use as my main device, I would still hit the wrong one at least once a day, but that was just a minor annoyance. On the bottom of the device, we have a micro USB port for charging, a loop for a lanyard, and the one speaker. The speaker is pretty good. It gets relatively loud and doesn't sound too tinny, but like with most on phones, it isn't great. Up front, we have the 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera, and below that, we have the 4.5 AMOLED display with a resolution of 1280 by 768 and 334 pixels per inch. The screen is sharp and clear, but with like all AMOLED displays, the colors were just absolutely terrible. They are completely oversaturated and just really not accurate at all. The viewing angles are also not great. Tilting this phone in one way or another will cast a green or blue tint on the whole screen. The screen is sharp, but that's pretty much all it has going for it. Below that screen, we have the three capacitive buttons, the back button, the home button, and a search button. I found these a bit annoying as well. They were plenty sensitive, and every time I tapped it, it worked perfectly fine, but I found I would accidentally hit them when I wanted to actually hit something on the screen, and there were about 3 occasions where I hit the search button somehow in my pocket, and it would actually call someone, which was pretty annoying. I think if these were positioned a bit lower, it would actually help a bit and take away some of those problems. On the back of the phone is where things get interesting. Towards the bottom you can see the 2 dots, which are used for wireless charging, and above that you see the massive camera. It features a 41 megapixel sensor, Carl Zeiss glass, a real xenon flash, as well as an LED light for focusing, and because of this the camera actually sticks out quite a bit from the back. When you're holding the phone you barely notice it, but this means the phone will actually never lay flat on the table. Overall, the build of the 1020 is very good. Even though it's made out of plastic, it never feels flimsy and it feels like it will hold up in the long run, which is pretty impressive. Now on the inside of the phone, we have a dual-core Snapdragon S4 at 1.5 GHz, 2 GB of RAM, and 32 GB of internal storage. Overall, the phone is very snappy and never really lagged. All the animations were smooth and the processor handled tasks pretty well. The battery in the inside is 200 mAh and lasted me pretty much all day on full brightness. I would unplug it around 10 AM and I would have to actually plug it back in at around 11 PM that night, so that was pretty good. Now this is a Windows Phone 8 device and everyone seems to have their own opinion on this. Some people think it's great, some people hate it, I'm pretty much in between. I really like the overall feel of the OS. It's fast and the animations are nice, but then there was things that just seemed to be really annoying. There was a lot of options that just didn't seem to be there, one being I couldn't actually scrub through a video, which made absolutely no sense to me. And the app selection really is lacking even after the few years it's been out. My big problem was that I wasn't able to interact with a lot of my friends on the many social networks I use. So the smartphone really turned into a texting machine that sat on my desk a lot. But like I said, everyone has their opinion and that's just mine. Now let's get to the main star of the show here, that 41 megapixel camera. This is really the only reason a lot of people have the 1020 on their radar. Like I said, it's a 41 megapixel sensor with Carl Zeiss glass and a real xenon flash. Now that all sounds great on paper, but none of that really matters in the end. What matters is how good the pictures are. This is, without a doubt, the best camera on a phone, period. Now that being said, I won't sugarcoat it and say it's perfect because it's actually far from it, but overall, it's really amazing. First, let's talk about the good. This camera has true image stabilization. This means the actual camera element moves to combat shake rather than it being done digitally, which means you can actually get pictures in much darker conditions than you would normally. The low light was really good and that image stabilization really helped. This camera is also really sharp and has great depth of field, and it's actually some of the best I've ever seen on a camera phone. Also, the addition of a real xenon flash like you would find on a normal point-and-shoot camera means that if you need to use it, the pictures actually look decent, or at least as decent as a camera with a built-in flash will look. The 41 megapixel sensor comes in handy as well. Is it necessary? Absolutely not. But this massive resolution allows you to zoom in digitally and not lose too much quality, which is pretty cool. On the video side of things, the 1080p video looked very sharp and the built-in mics were absolutely superb. If you want to see a full test of this camera, be sure to check the link in the description for a ton of different shots I took throughout the week. Now let's talk about the bad. First off, the colors really aren't great. I wouldn't call them terrible, but at times they could be very flat, although other times they did pop and look great, but that didn't happen for every shot. Also, there is no macro mode on this camera. On pretty much every camera phone out there, you can get pretty close to the subject and still be able to focus no problem, but you can't do that here, and it actually prevented me from getting a lot of shots that I wanted. On the video side of things, the videos seem to change white balance too often and switch between them really fast. It's like it couldn't make up its mind. And worse than that, if you were taking a video and decided to start walking, the stabilization would get all crazy and it just looked terrible. Now that 41 megapixel image means that your files are going to be pretty big, and they go up to about 25 megabytes per file. But the way the phone handles it, instead of actually uploading that huge file to every single service you want to upload it to, it actually uploads a compressed 5 megabyte version, which is much easier to handle. The camera app also allows you to have full manual control over everything in the camera, like shutter speed, ISO, and white balance, and this is especially nice if you're really into being in full control of your pictures. Overall, this camera is great, and like I said, it's the best camera on a phone right now. So overall, this phone is pretty good. It seems like Nokia decided to make a point-and-shoot camera, but they needed a way to sell it, so they just added it to a Windows phone. For a Windows phone, it's definitely the best one out there, and if you're okay with not having every single app and you just want a great phone with a great camera, this is going to do you pretty well. If a camera is what's really most important to you, then I think this phone is going to do you just fine, but if you want the best overall experience, I don't know if you're going to find it here, but definitely go check it out if you're interested. So that's my review of the Nokia Lumia 1020. If you enjoyed and you want to see more of my content, be sure to hit subscribe so you can see when I upload new videos. Like I said, I'm Matt, and I'll see you guys in my next video. See ya.